Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Grande Bouffe.
It's a big feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. Good evening, Mike.
Hey, Cole, I kind of want to keep it real intimate tonight. Just keep keep it real close to the mic, yeah.
I think people would misinterpret that, Mike. I think that they would think, untoward things of us.
That we're coming on to, each other or to the audience?
I don't know, but untoward things. That's a good new movie. It's a good name for a movie. Untoward things.
Yeah, untoward is a fascinating word.
Interesting word.
I always love using it.
It's got a reversal.
Yeah.
In it, intrinsically built into the word.
It's not toward, it's toward. Like going toward something. Like
right. But you're going, but it's
not.
But not. Yeah,
untoward. But you wouldn't say, I guess it's hard to use the word toward. It's kind of easier to use the word untoward than just toward.
Toward.
You got to say like they're going towards. Why the S?
Towards.
I don't get that. Why towards, but you can't just go
toward.
Can you go toward it? Or towards it?
Toward it. You could go toward it.
You can go toward it.
I think so. And towards it. Towards them? I don't know. I don't know. All this grammar, it's so troubling.
I want to pull that up. See, one thing that's cool about this podcast is I never get any service on my phone here, and I still don't know your Wi-Fi password after all this time. So I'm not looking it up. Normally,
I'm anal about my passwords, man. They're each and every one is precious. Yeah.
Okay.
Come on.
I just feel like you don't trust me. / also, you have like a weird Wi-Fi network. Like it doesn't show up all the time. It's kind of
seriously. I have to go. Sometimes it'll take me having to request my password from the place because I can't remember which one is on which device. And
I got a password manager. This thing called LastPass.
Yeah. What happens when that gets hacked?
Well, here's the thing. You have to like verify it with your phone when you log in. Like you can add all kinds of annoying complexities to it. I don't know. But I mean, you're right. Like that does seem like a not great thing when that happens. But I don't know. No one's safe. No one's safe.
No, there is no safety.
The world's falling apart,
and there is no privacy. But I was really shocked that they released Chelsea Manning. I find that amazing, and I'm very pleased about it. I have to say
Wait,
it's about time.
Cole,
what?
You just broke that news to me. I missed that.
That happened today.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Chelsea Manning is free.
Wow.
Time served 7 years.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah. 35-year sentence released for time served 7 years.
How, under whose decision
Parole.
Was that? That's nuts. That's like the parole board of the military tribunal. Go look it up yourself, listeners. This is I guess now you can date check when we recorded this. Evergreen no more. That's so crazy. It's like, that didn't make my breaking news NYT notification app. I think if your name isn't Donald Trump, you don't get to the top of that.
Okay, so the New York Times says that Chelsea Manning walked freely out of the military prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas on Wednesday, bringing to a close one of the most extraordinary criminal cases in American history over the leaking of government secrets to the public. Shish kebab. Sentencing to an unprecedented 35-year prison term for disclosing archives of secret files to WikiLeaks, Ms. Manning spent about 7 years in prison, already double the second longest sentence of any leak case. She was freed 28 years earlier because President Barack Obama, in one of his final acts, commuted the bulk of her remaining sentence.
I do remember that. I guess I hadn't put together... I didn't connect that. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's cause for celebration. So we will say cheers to Chelsea Manning and clink our drinks.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers to the president who imprisoned far more journalists and leakers than any president combined. But But God, do I miss him? I mean that wholeheartedly, dear Jesus.
So, Mike, I want you to introduce the movie that we're going to talk about because I've got to grab a beer bottle. So, tell our listeners all about something about Sweetie.
Yeah, I'll tell them something about it. I'm not going to do all about it. But this is the first film, I believe first film, he'll confirm this in a second, by Jane Campion. Jane Campion, she's Australian, I believe.
She's from New Zealand, but she made this film in Australia, and this is indeed her premiere for debut. Her film. Yeah, this is
she's
debut feature.
She's a New Zealand filmmaker, which I'll give my history on knowing any of her work, which is a series called Top of the Lake starring Elizabeth Moss, which is fantastic if you haven't seen it. It's one season with a second coming out this September 2017. And there's a through line that I'll connect with that, which is one of her latest projects, and this earliest one, which is honestly the biggest connection is like the meditative aspect that shows up in this film, this interest in spiritualism and in I don't want to say the occult or the supernatural, but certainly the spiritual in our life, which feels a little not tacked on, but just like an extra element of this film, which is Cole's back, so I can like talk to him now.
Yeah.
Cole, this movie is a story about a couple. It's about sisters, and it's about a family introduced kind of in that order. You know,
well, I think it's interesting that we did Life is Sweet, because I looked at this movie through a filter of that movie.
This is like Life is Sweet plus one of the last movies we did, which is White, which you're just bringing that element of a couple who's having trouble consummating, and that being a bit of like the impetus of the movie. But certainly mostly like Life is Sweet. There's a lot of
well, you have the sister. You have the sisters.
The sister dynamic.
One of them is a misfit, possibly on the spectrum. Probably, well, definitely on the spectrum.
Yeah, I don't know if in both. Well, maybe in both movies, honestly. But like, yes, certainly like having like issues of like psychological
could be
nature, yeah.
She could be bipolar.
Which are we talking about?
Intellectually challenged.
Sweetie right now?
Sweetie, yeah.
Yeah, so Sweetie, who's a character who, you know, I think it's worth noting doesn't show up until, I would say, the end tip of Act 1, right? Like, it's an oddly delayed appearance for the title character.
Yeah, Genevieve Lemon plays Dawn, a.k.a. Sweetie, and it's a very fascinating movie. It turns out that it's a black comedy, but it leads you on for a long time. So you don't really discover that until the end, which is a very strange place to put that emphasis. And so
I want to hear you unpack that at some point. Yeah.
Well, it has, the film has these magical realist tinges of tone to it.
Yeah,
and
tonally, I'd agree with that. I don't think there's actually much.
It's tonal, and also it has some tonal references to David Lynch. Where you have the chair, the princess chair in the pink room with the light bulbs around it. The sets go from being very Spartan and impoverished to being almost Baroque.
There's also some of the cinematography reminds me of the early Jim Jarmusch stuff.
I was going to say that. No, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this
and the subject matter has
awkward angling. Like a thing that I started noticing in films recently is when you kind of like, I would say like counterpose your shot, reverse shot, where you are kind of not putting the person you're cutting back to in what is like the proper piece of the frame. You might put them like kind of far in the lower right, and there's a lot of that. So in a
displacement,
so in a given conversation, you're really highlighting the disconnect of people because there's some sort of natural place for a back and forth to put them, and so it's hitting a lot of that. But it starts off,
well, let me just set it up a bit because it really does come from Jane Campion. She was the story was her idea, and she co-wrote it with with one other writer, with Gerard Lee is the other credited author. And so the movie has a real sense of authenticity in the strangeness, oddly, of what we're witnessing out of these characters. They feel like real characters. No one's overplaying their character, and there's a real dryness to the delivery of everything from, it's colorful in a Spike Lee way, but it's also very dry.
Yeah, there's something where it's like the characters are doing something so specific. I just watched the entire series of Girls in like 3 weeks, and I'm not gonna get that into it, but it's like I'm like, are you getting estrogen shots now? All right, Cole. All right. Jeez, what is? I mean, no, maybe that experience made you want to get estrogen. Like I'm transitioning now because I watched 6 seasons of an acclaimed HBO comedy drama, but that writing is so specific about characters that I can't
believe you put yourself through that torture. I would never do such a thing.
I enjoyed it a lot. I really respect Lena Dunham now.
You hurt me. You hurt me bad.
You get a sense from that writing, which is very specific, that these are like, oh, this must have been
your
something.
Generation, but I have to say that mumblecore stuff is for the birds, man.
It's
can't stand
I don't think
it.
This is technically like mumblecore. I was just going to draw this parallel is like there's something about specificity, which is on Girls. It definitely seems like, okay, this is like probably a thing that like happens. Specificity. If you say it fast enough, you can say however you want.
That's true.
And that it kind of gives you the sense that like you're accurately portraying something that either happened to you, or I don't want to like not give it credit, but it has you go along with it, and Jane Campion is doing maybe something similar. I don't know. There's
specific scenes that just really stand out for me in this movie, and one, of course, is when Sweetie, after burying her would-be producer, she fancies herself an entertaintress. Look, I said taint. I managed to get taint into my word. She buries her boyfriend in the sand, and then she goes and bones her sister's boyfriend on the sand, and
it's never a big deal.
No, and he learns a trick because she's really into licking. So then he goes back and tries to lick his very emotionally and physically remote girlfriend, and she finds it utterly distasteful, which is strange because she stole him away from the girl that he was supposed to marry by jumping his bones in a parking deck.
Yeah. Let's talk about the beer and then get into a bit of the chronology of this movie.
So once again, Mike suffered Annie's the torture of shopping at Annie's bodega.
It was really not pleasant. Like I was checking her for the longest time, and she couldn't find the Ballast Point price, and was just
forget about the fact that she works there and a lot.
Yeah, well, I guess I discovered that she's not like the owner or anything like that, or she was just like blaming someone else. It was a whole thing, and then she was like, "You're so polite," and I'm like, "It's fine."
If any of you listeners are ever in New York City,
do yourself a favor. Annie's.
Yeah, don't go to Annie's. Take a walk around the reservoir. Go visit the Metropolitan. If you go to the Met, proudly say one adult and give them a quarter. Don't give them $20. Give them a quarter. They have plenty of millions and billions. Because they have the Coke. Did you notice? Did you know that on the fountain in front of the Met it says Coke Brothers?
Yes, I did. If you got Coke money, like get the fuck out of here.
I'm not giving you any more money than I possibly have to. I mean, I guess I should make a point and just give them a nickel instead of a quarter.
You can give them nothing, man.
No, that's true. It's suggested. Suggested admission.
I don't want to shit on the Met. It's great, but it's like they got that Coke money.
Oh my god, I'm so disgusted by that.
So this is a Ballast Point Sculpin, which has a very pretty yet prickly fish on it, and I kind of picked this one for the art. It reminds me a bit of Kay, our main character here, who is
she's what you call a unicorn as a person.
She's a $1 billion IPO.
IPA?
She's a $1 billion IPA. Yeah. Why is she a unicorn as a person? What just am I gonna learn some fucked up shit over?
Listen, you and I both know a certain person whose name I cannot reveal publicly who calls herself a unicorn.
Okay.
And
I guess we both know this person, but I don't know who it is that we both know. But okay. Still no clue. I don't get it.
No clue at all. But anyway, the point is, she's just somebody who's completely. She has no filters. She's just cuckoo, and cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs all the time.
Well,
am I right?
There's unicorns and there's Ballast Point Sculpin, which is
one of my favorites. I love this beer.
Oh, you love this one?
I love it. I love it.
It's I got an India Pale Ale this time. I really thought we should branch out and go for an IPA. I didn't want to keep us in our wheelhouse in the slightest.
No, so and it's a 7.0, which for me is my ideal. I guess I really like a 7.4, if I had my druthers, but 7.0 is great.
Sorry,
it's great. And this one is really, it's got a nice aromatic quality to it. I really like the way the fragrance of the beer.
Oh, there's it's funny. It has like an aquatic theme to it because there is something kind of sour and sea-like to it. It's very refreshing. The hops are very light, and the color is beautiful. It's got this nice orange color to it, and it's got a citrus quality, I would say. So Kay.
Oh my goodness.
So we kind of launched into this. This movie has sort of a novelistic feel to it. There's voiceover. There's
flashbacks.
There's kind of like sort of ambiguous imagery, but Kay is dabbling with spiritualism. She's visiting a woman who's reading her tea leaves, who has a character who we only see in 2 scenes, but there's a character who has some sort of like intellectual disability, who's at this fortune teller's house. Yeah, and this fortune teller,
she's the son. He's the son.
He's her son of the fortune teller, and this fortune teller is a man with a question mark. Is the thing, and this turns out to be her a man who she's having some sort of relationship at work, but he's engaged. Mm-hmm. And within, let's say, the 6-minute mark of this movie, she's stolen him away from who he's engaged with by having sex with him, or almost having sex with him. Now that I think about it, in a parking garage, and we don't kind of see how that goes down with the fiance, but they're living together. They basically seem like man and wife, and they start this life together. And it's all.
And I have to say, Lewis is the husband's name, played by Tom Lykos, and this is the only film that he acted in, to my knowledge. That's what it says on IMDb. And to me,
he looks super familiar to me.
Yeah, he has a very familiar looking face, and he's a super likable character. To me, he's the most likable character in the movie, and he's the outsider who comes in and.
Yeah, he's kind of the moral center for being the guy who cheats on his wife with her autistic sister.
Right. Well, yeah, she's a big girl. She sits on him on the beach. It's I don't think he had much of a chance to get away, really. But what do I know? I
think he was into it.
But he's the outsider who's come in, and he's introduced to his new relationship in this. To me, is a Lynchian way. When the plant that he, what's the story?
So I think we start even earlier. There is
she rips out the.
I want to bring this. Like she's talking about she has these dreams. She has this issue with trees.
Yeah,
which is interesting to say about a person. She has an issue with trees. And the problem with trees is that they grow roots, which will like go under your house and mess with you.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I'm going to probably take away the most from this movie is Campion is doing metaphors correctly. I feel, because I think metaphors like operate on a like secondary level of meaning and also like a rudimentary one. And they do work like this where you get really hung up about a physical object in your reality. So she winds up pulling this tree out because it has this like indescribable sort of subliminal meaning to her, and she can't quite understand what it means to her. So she freaks out about this tree because it means something on a deeper level.
She ripped out the thing. It was that you hang your clothes on in the backyard, and except that it's concrete.
I thought he took it out to plant that tree.
Is that what happened?
And she says, "Well, yeah." So they had a clothes rack and they ripped it out of the concrete, kind of taking away her ability to dry her clothes. And throughout the rest of the movie, she's just hanging her dresses on the fence
on the side. Well, she on the now half. It's lying down the clothesline. It's one of those. It's a pole, but then it has these four things poles that extend out, and the cords wrap around it.
And
so
it's still
laying there for her to hang her panties on.
They're specifically pretty shitty place that they're renting. This couple, they're in their like maybe early 30s, and they're starting their life together. And they
live with Sweetie.
Well, I find it really interesting that like Sweetie shows up real like late for a movie.
It didn't strike me as her.
You didn't find that on?
No, I didn't feel like she showed up late. She pretty much shows up as soon as they move in.
But that's a good 25 minutes into this movie.
Yeah, and she shows up. Not only that, she shows up with her sleazy junkie boyfriend who's supposed to be her producer. Yeah,
so this couple, they've got all interesting things going on. We already see that they're having sexual issues. Kay has sort of like finds herself like recoiling from him, and
it's so strange because she really has this reversal of character where at first she's the one who comes on strong and jumps him, and then she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore.
I think there's something. I'm not gonna say I understand it. Like the last movie that we recorded together was about impotency, which I'm about to go on record saying like I understand more than this movie, but I kind of just but I'm kind of like, but there's also like there is a like female perspective on like sex drive that like I'm not gonna claim that like I have like a hold on what like this character is like feeling exactly, but like I agree. It's like from the outside, it's like wait, like isn't this a girl that like seduced the guy with her sexuality and now she's not putting out?
Let's just say that Kay and Dawn are sexual opposites because Sweetie. Dawn is Sweetie. So Dawn is very sexually active, and I think that what happens is when Sweetie shows up, Kay, because she's so repulsed by her sister, she locks down her sexuality.
I don't think that I will totally agree that Dawn's sort of essence is part of what's preventing Kay's sexuality, but she is like not wanting to sleep with her boyfriend before Kay shows up.
Yeah, so they start sleeping.
It's not causal, but there is a connection there. There is a like dichotomy that's being like highlighted.
Kay and Lewis start sleeping in separate rooms. And they have to get in order to get to the bathroom, they have to walk through the room that Sweetie's sleeping in.
Yeah, it's
with her sexually active.
So that's kind of like the image
partner.
that is like there's this couple, there's this sexual dysfunction between
everything
them,
is so dysfunctional
and into it, and they are, and Kay from the beginning seems like a pretty weird out there girl. Then they drop into it. Then you realize like, oh, this movie is about this other character that comes into it with her sleazy boyfriend, who is this very forward, this very like punk rock sexual, and increasingly non-functional Aspergery. Like you start to realize.
Yeah, I mean, Kay's on the spectrum too. Kay's probably manic depressive. as we go along.
Well, what spectrum are we talking about?
I think we're talking for Sweetie, we're talking the autism spectrum, Asperger's, and then I think for Kay, I think she's manic depressive.
Yeah, but both these girls are.
I mean, she's not bipolar because there's never a good day for Kay.
Yeah, both these women are definitely struggling with very specific things, and I think these actresses were good at it. It's a universe where, like, no one's saying. It's almost like they don't have terms for what these people are dealing with. They're just fascinating.
Well, and why are they together? You watch them and you understand that they're family, but you just hate the fact that they're together. They need to not be together. They're so much worse when they're together.
They
as cuckoo as Sweetie is when she's with her boyfriend. Well, it's not entirely true, but she's at least having fun and she's not hurting anyone.
It gets these dynamics of family really right, and also in a way that you don't kind of want to you don't applaud it. Like, it's very specific and weird when you're watching it, but when I'm thinking about it, it's like, yes, like when you get two people who are having their issues like this together, one is inevitably the one who has their shit figured out and one who's not. So you're introduced to this movie and you're like, this girl Kay is fucking all over the place. Then her sister shows up and you're like, well, Kay's the normal one and Sweetie just can't get her. And Sweetie becomes less and less functional the longer she's in this house.
And a lot of that is driven by the conflict that she has with her sister. And there are some very melodramatic moments as when Sweetie decides to put Kay's porcelain horses in her mouth and try to chew them.
Yeah.
Little horses that Kay is just crazy. She's collected this and she has names for them, this little collection of porcelain horses.
Yeah, it's like there's definitely this like regression being projected, like happening, that like Sweetie's absolutely.
We have to talk about the father.
I was about to say, so if this movie is about a couple, it's about sisters, and it's about a family. So then,
but it's also
dropped into the middle of Act 2
in a way that looks similar to White, to our last podcast for Kieslowski's White. It's a movie that it's not about what it's about, because what we come to find out from the father about the father's character is that he is as much to blame for the problems, and he is exploiting his daughters, Sweetie in particular, in some very untoward ways.
So let's talk about the introduction of the parents, because again, I think like we basically jump into a scene with them, right? Yeah, we don't know who they are. Very interesting storytelling patterns.
Dad shows up.
Okay, so like if this were a more normal movie, we would the couple would already be together. B, Sweetie would be introduced in like a cutaway scene, or we would see them growing up together and we would have seen the parents there. And then like these three stories would have interacted. Campion is doing something fascinating, which is just like the couple getting together, their problems, and then you drop Sweetie into it. And then Dad shows up because Mom needs time by herself to figure her shit out. And then we have a parallel between these two couples that are each trying to figure their shit out. You have Kay and her boyfriend, you have the parents. Kay and her boyfriend are not admitting they have any problems. They're sleeping in different rooms. Her boyfriend, tell me his name again.
Lewis.
Lewis, who I think it really should be highlighted. Seems like he has sex with Sweetie on the beach. I feel like
he does. He does.
It really.
I mean, she jumps on him and really makes a go of it.
It really gets washed away pretty quickly. But that's
with the sexual. The sex scenes in the movie really have an earnest lustiness to them, and you're kind of happy in that moment that Sweetie's
I was not happy in that moment.
Well, I thought it was fine because
I was not into that at all.
Her boyfriend's such a loser.
I won't disagree with that.
At least Lewis is having a good day. Come on, that guy deserves a good day.
Lewis, you did get this vibe. He's like, oh, fucking finally, one of these girls is going to fuck me. I thought that they dispose of Sweetie's boyfriend in a fucking great
it's
way.
hilarious. The scene in the cafe is what we're referencing. You'll know it when it happens.
They also tee it up so great where someone says like, well, Dad, why don't you just take him to a restaurant and leave him there? Which I don't get that plan.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of scenes about leaving there, but here's my.
But it's so funny that they just execute on that exact plan. Like,
all right, but here's my contention about the father is that the father is, he's there for a reason, and the reason that he's there is what we witness when he's in the bathtub.
That's a weird scene.
Okay, so in the scene, fair listeners, if there are children around, you might want to send them from the room.
So let's talk about like what this dad is like, because he's not a completely he's not like an old Alzheimer's patient, like sort of non-sentient.
He's probably 60,
senile,
short gray hair, kind of a handsome guy for an old man. And
he's got a certain swagger to him.
And he loves his daughters, and the way that he has raised Sweetie, you can see the difference in his attitude toward Sweetie and Kay. He's into Sweetie. He's not into Kay, but he's really into Sweetie. He's into her. He's the one who he's the one who has fueled her desires to be an entertainer, because he shows her off in the backyard where she does this thing. She walks up on a chair and steps so that it,
which is straight up
turns over.
Like if it was your 12-year-old daughter who was doing that trick of standing on a chair while it leans down, you'd be like, yo, your daughter needs to find a day job. Like, that's a fucking not impressive trick. But this woman is like, looks like 35, 40 years old at this point. And so, yeah, there's this sadness to it. So keep going what you're saying. Like, I kind of hadn't taken it to where I think you're going, but like, I don't know if I disagree.
So what happens is Sweetie is giving Pops a bath. And because she's
what immediately preceded this scene? Like,
I can't remember what immediately preceded it, because what happens in the bathroom, excuse me, took it really, my jaw dropped, because I realized I was seeing exactly what I thought I was seeing, which is Sweetie giving her dad a bath and accidentally in quotes, just slipping her hand down, dropping the soap so she can reach down to his butt. And then the next thing she's doing is she's playing with Papa's weenie.
She's
giving him a bath, and we don't see and what's especially provocative about it is the way the Campion films it. She takes a Polanski approach where you only see the back of his head, but we see Sweetie very well, and it's a shocking scene when it happens. But what you're seeing is the level of dysfunction, and she's not putting too fine a point on it. It's a scene that could come and go, and you wouldn't even really think about it. But it's clear the incestuous. I mean, it's not even subtext. The incestuous text here says that he has taken advantage of his daughter. He is taking advantage of his daughter, so thereby he does take advantage of his daughter.
There's what's textual, what's subtextual. It's what's textual.
Well, what do you see? What do you see?
You see a grown woman who is not a like completely competent person. It's not clear exactly what's going on with her, but you see her washing her father in a way that first looks like caring and like a good thing to do. Although while I brought up about his mental state, he's really not so dysfunctional that he needs to be washed.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But there is absolutely a shot where she's clearly like touching his genitals.
Yeah,
and reacts to it. She has this look on her face.
She's jerking him off.
And no, I would not agree with that assessment. I mean, like she is reaching the front, like in his crotch area.
She's arousing him sexually.
There's something weird there. And I think what you can take from it is that there's something very weird about this relationship, and the framing of it is interesting. I like you saying it's like Polanski like, because it's Kay's POV, right? This is Kay walking through it, and then we see her seeing something weird, and then we see her POV.
Right, the bathroom door has been left open,
which is also,
that's the Polanski part,
and it's also so all of these things when you like put them out loud, I was like, okay, so like she's washing her father, who is not like so old that he needs to be washed, and she has left the door open. You know, it's
disturbing.
It's strange.
Disturbing.
And I think what's most disturbing, because like, you know, like Cole, if it was like, and then she sees her sister, her mentally challenged sister jerking off her father. It's like, that's almost more like tolerable than where it really is I don't know exactly what I'm looking at.
Well, and
I think that's more unsettling.
Well, and right, and that's the genius of this movie, is that Campion puts in all of these details, and she does it in an almost prosaic way, where if it were America, it would be Americana-esque. We're obviously looking at lower class characters in Australia, and this one particular family, where the windows in the kitchen, they're not traditional windows that you can see out of. They're frosted, so you can't see outside of the windows. So it has this insular, claustrophobic feeling to it.
Yeah.
And
I felt very like trapped in that house. Yeah, watching this, it was really unsettling.
It's a very uncomfortable movie to watch.
Like, I hated their yard.
Oh my goodness, it's so ugly. Where
Life is Sweet sort of makes you feel like those little row houses could be like fun to live in, and then slowly kind of eases you into like the fucked up things that happen there. This movie, like, right away makes you feel like this house is not safe. And to go back to like what Campion is doing with metaphors is like, there's something that really is fucking bugging Kay about trees. And then at the end of it, spoiler alert, Sweetie has died by falling out of a tree house. I mean, I said spoiler alert. Cole's freaking out over here. I said spoiler alert. I don't know what I'm supposed to do when you say
it's a black comedy. It's a black comedy. It's a black comedy. You don't really find that out till the end, and then it hits you in the gut, and it says, "All right, kids, make sense of that." It's a very, you know,
is her death scene the black comedy? Is that what you're saying? What do you?
Okay, so you know, part of the criteria of a black comedy is that someone has to die, and you don't expect there to be any death in this movie. It seems like everything's going along, and it will have some sort of resolution. You know,
yeah, Sweetie's gonna get a record deal.
You know, well, you don't think that. I mean, she's a doomed character clearly, but you don't think she's going to die. You don't think she's gonna.
Yeah, it's preposterous. And the way she does die is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and that is fitting for her character, because she is somebody who's on a downward spiral. And you know, come on, we're in the big bad world. We all know people that are on a downward spiral. Don't you? I do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's when you get to that point, like in the film, it's hard to see exactly what her life is gonna be like. And the dad has this obsession with kind of keeping this within the family, which there is,
and that's that's a very clear. That speaks very clearly to the incest nature of his mentality, of his thought process, because of course he wants to keep everything a secret.
So I'm gonna put this out there. There's a reading of it that literal incest has not happened, but there is a almost obsession with not seeking like outside help and being objective about their problems that is incestuous, like in nature. And it kind of climaxes with this family not figuring out like what the fuck is going on with this daughter because no one says what is up with her. And this is not the 1930s.
That's exactly right. These are people who are in complete denial of
like what
of their circumstances.
This woman has a severe like mental handicap, and like no one's fucking like says like, oh well, she's has this or needs to be in this medication. Like she's just like inexplicably a person who's harmful to herself who, oh, you know what? I can't believe it. I brought this up again. They just fucking leave her at that house. They trick her. She wants to go on a trip.
Oh, yeah.
And they trick her. And like, so this woman who's clearly a danger to herself and others, they just leave because they want to go on this trip to hang out with the mom who's living with these outback cowboys.
So she can sing her song.
Yeah. And so it all kind of climaxes with, and I don't think we could have done this podcast without talking about Sweetie dying, because this point where they let her die, like
they do.
And the film is good at kind of portraying it like there's no option, but Kay's after she's fallen, 25 feet and like all this stuff has fallen on her, Kay's trying to give her mouth to mouth, and she's like, can we call someone? And they don't have 911 in Australia, but they have the equivalent. And like, they're just like, this is our out. Like we're free, basically, is the vibe. And the dad at the funeral is like, don't hang around. Like, get the fuck out of here.
In ye olden days, when parents would have a child that was mentally afflicted.
I agree. In Sparta, they did this shit.
Let me just tell you, they would walk them out into the woods and abandon them.
Yeah, like before there was like...
They didn't wait 35 years.
I don't know what government healthcare was like in Australia at this time, but I bet it was better than when the plan was like, well, the frost will take care of everything. But so it's true. Is they like, she's just, everyone just projects it's like she is the vessel, she is the place where they put all of their problems into, in a very real way. Families really do this, where like the person who struggles the most is sort of the metaphorical encapsulation of it. And the darkest shit is when she's dead. Things are better for everyone.
Well, that's true. And also, what you see in these situations is, they just become the outcast and they're left to fend for themselves. And that, I don't know what to say about it. It's just in a way, it's a very tragic story for Sweetie, because she really has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, she's treated in kind of like the outcast in a given society, be it the Jews, the immigrants, the refugees. You just project them as all of your problems. And what's kind of dark about this movie is that people really do project so many of their issues onto Sweetie that when she is gone, it seems like they actually solve their problems. There's something really dark about human nature that I feel like is being said there, is that like you can progress as a person by turning someone into the manifestation of your problems. It doesn't feel like it's the movie saying that. It's not like the movie is making Sweetie into a metaphor for all of their problems. You feel like the characters are making Sweetie into the metaphor, into the manifestation of their issues. And when she's dead, it's like, okay, well, I guess we can move on,
Yeah, I just did want to point out that this film premiered at Cannes, where it was roundly booed.
Tight.
It's
a great sign.
People booed this movie. When I was in Cannes, I had the honor of being the only person in the huge crowd in the Grand Palais to boo the movie that we had all just witnessed, and that was Macbeth with Fassbender and Cotillard.
Oh, you booed it?
I booed it so hard. To me, it is the.
Did they fix the audio? I heard the audio is garbage.
It's trash. You can't understand. You can't hear or.
Well, they always say
the actors are whispering the whole time. No, it's the least important part.
The least important part of Shakespeare is the words.
No, this is the worst adaptation of a Shakespeare play ever. But of course, all the critics in Cannes, rallied around it as if there was something to it, and then. Oh, shocker, it was released, but no one even gave it a second thought. Yeah. Rightfully so. It's a horrible piece of shit. There, I said it. Feel much better now.
Cole always in the right.
Well.
Can always in the wrong.
No, that's I'm frequently wrong, but I'm a hypocrite, and I openly admit it.
But let's, to be about, how this movie's reception, ahead of its time is a funny thing. Campion, I liked your Lynchian comparisons. I think there's a lot to that.
Well, you get that in the camera angles when they're when the little boy's crossing the yard and you're looking down. She uses these overhead shots where you're looking down on the action, where the characters will be like the husband or the boyfriend is lying down on the rug and Kay comes in and you're looking from overhead.
For a first film, there was all extraordinarily strong choices for shots.
It made me think of Gus Van Sant too. I think. They were working at similar times. I kind of equate Jane Campion and Gus Van Sant on a similar level.
For having no fucking credentials for saying this, I'll say I felt like some of the choices were not great ones, but they were all very strong ones. There was no just simple, straightforward angles on any given thing. Some of them felt like not needlessly complex, but sort of resonating in a way that I didn't understand its intent, which may be on me, but I also feel like. I
like it when Kay and Lewis are at the beach and they see that woman who knows Sweetie, and she says, "Oh, Sweetie's just scared." Remember that?
Yeah.
That really explains it because Kay's got such a hard-on against her sister. But this woman who knows the whole situation, she's the outsider who understands everything. She's speaking the theme line of the film, and that's another sneaky thing about this movie is who's speaking the theme lines. It's this character who just barely is there for a blip, and then she asks Lewis about it, what a crocodile sounds like, and she jumps in the water where there is no crocodile.
What else struck me was the just to put at the end here is the fortune teller.
Yeah,
she gives this a bit of a thesis about love, which is, love is just sex and courage.
Yeah.
And there's a spectrum that's set up with her son on one part, another character who has intellectual disability. And this woman says very sort of definitively and harshly of no one will, he'll never have sex, so he'll never have love.
Right.
Just harsh and intense.
Yeah.
But he's sexually frustrated. For some reason, Kay's voice drives him crazy.
Drives him nuts, yeah.
Not in a sexual way, really, but in an aggravated way.
Yeah, aggravating way.
So he's on one end of the spectrum. Somewhere further along it in this theory, right, is Sweetie, who is a sexually active, promiscuous
person. She's an animal, and that's what your fortune teller links to, is that we're all animals.
We're animals, and she goes up on Kay for being too intellectual and too in her head. So Kay is on this other extreme of being out of her body, not sensual enough, and is kind of driving this thing that she needs to sort of come down to the middle, and. This movie kind of does this harsh thing where it's I guess in Kay's universe, her sister's occupying this animalistic space, but only through her dying and being left for dead, basically, can Kay kind of come back into her animalistic human sexuality.
But does she? I don't even know.
It seemed, I read at the end that her and Lewis have a romantic sexual connection once again.
Okay.
But it's,
So Sweetie was the big buzzkill.
Let me propose a total just non-black comedy version of this.
Yeah.
Sweetie is Kay's imaginary friend who she finally has to get rid of. And when her imaginary friend disappears, then Kay can be a real person. That's like a fun, like, you know, beautiful thing.
Okay, and so if you're going for that kind of displacement, then the father, she's the victim of molestation.
And she processes it when she lets go of Kay because she can integrate her sexuality into her, like, you know, more waking consciousness.
I like it. That's a very
not the factual case of the movie, but
very, very angular approach. I like it.
Yeah, not really what happened. You know, it's darker, and you know, I think it is a very raw, dark thing to say that like people can grow as humans while being cruel and dismissive to people that they should not be like that towards.
Well, one thing,
and even because of that behavior.
Well, the film is part of the Criterion Collection. It's a very sophisticated film. There's no two ways around it. When you watch this movie, you know right away that you are in the hands of a filmmaker who knows exactly what she is doing. The cinematography is beautiful. It's a great movie to look at. There's a lot of really great stuff in the compositions that Campion puts together. I just did want to mention too that Jane Campion's next film after this film came out in '98, was An Angel at My Table, and then she blew everyone out of the water with The Piano in '93. I was in Cannes and I saw The Piano at its premiere in Cannes, and I think that film went on to win Academy Awards as well.
In '93, I was 3 years old. I was not at Cannes, and I still haven't seen The Piano.
Alrighty then. Well, on that note, I would like for all of our listeners to please tell your friends about Le Grande Bouffe, The Big Feast, and share us and like us on SoundCloud. You can find it. You can find the podcast with goofy little pictures on colesmithy.com, where you can also become a patron and become a part of the new share economy that allows us to do things like make Le Grande Bouffe a big feast. As always, remember to please turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie.